In the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. For our presentation today, we have an update on recent outreach events, and Stephanie Weaver, our Communications and Public Relations Manager, will give us a presentation on these outreach activities. Good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning, Chair, and good morning, fellow board. My name is Stephanie Weaver. I am the Communications and Public Relations Manager here at PSTA, and I'm here to talk to you about some recent events that PSTA participated in over the last few weeks. But first, I wanted to tell you the why. So it's a priority for PSTA to engage in many different stakeholders within our community. So I'm going to go through a few of those groups. The first is our riders, and unfortunately, Commissioner Patty Reed is not here, but we wanted to thank her for going out at a meet and greet at Pinellas Park Terminal with CEO Brad Miller. The two were able to interact with many different riders about the services that PSTA provides, as well as different programs that PSTA offers that they didn't know about. So thank you, Patty Reed. The next event that we did to engage our riders was our Earth Day celebration. So on Monday, we hosted our second annual Sunset Serenade, where we had local musicians on board each of the Sunrunner buses, where they were able to serenade the riders to the beach, and then we had an Earth Day celebration at the beach. It was a great way to engage our riders, to tell them about the Sunrunner and all the different programs that we offer. The next group that we like to engage with is government municipalities. As many of you know, last week we had a celebration for the official land swap with the City of Clearwater and PSTA to build a brand new multimodal transit center. So it was a great event. We had the mayor along with the entire City Council of Clearwater there to join us on this momentous day. Special shout out to our board chair, Gina Driscoll, Commissioner Tom Reed, as well as PSTA's board champion of this project since the very beginning, Commissioner David Albritton, for joining us there on that day. It was a great event. Lastly, the last group that we'd like to engage with is our employees. So you may recall last month, Director of Transportation Greg Bracken and Director of Maintenance Henry Lukasik came before you with a group of bus operators and fleet technicians about the regional rodeo competition that they won. Well, I'm here to tell you, we did it again. So last week was the state rodeo competition in Jacksonville, Florida, and I'm here to tell you PSTA brought home the hardware. First off, you see Terrell Berry, our bus operator. He won first place in our driver competition. Next, we have fleet technicians Bobby Ferris, Tyler Johnson, and Paul Levesque. They won first place in the fleet technician competition as well. Now, you may notice they're not here today. Well, let me tell you, they are on their way to Portland, Oregon for the international competition. So they will compete against transit folks from across the globe. We know that they're going to do us proud and represent PSTA well. So with that, I'll pass it back to you, Chair, for any questions or comments.
All right, thank you. Questions, comments, anyone? All right, thank you so much for that update.
Of course.
Great
Thank you, Chair.
stuff. All right, we'll move now to our public comment for any consent agenda items or items that are not on the agenda. If there are any members of the public here who wish to speak today, please fill out a green card and just hand it to the staff sitting in the front here, and speakers will be recognized in the order in which cards are received. As of right now, I have one card, and that is from Mark Potier. I hope I pronounced that correctly. If you could go ahead and join us here at the podium. And if you could please state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. My name is Mark Potier. I'm a local resident. I'm at 13260 34th Street North, Clearwater, Florida. Thank you.
All right.
I'm talking in reference to certain things that have bothered me over the course of, well, since I've been here since 2004 in the Pinellas County area. Basically, it has to do with comfort, physical comfort on these buses. I've noticed that a lot of the buses are very cold. They have the AC on. That doesn't seem to be able to be easily adjusted as far as temperature. It's either like freezing cold or off, or that type of thing. It's just a very pervasive problem. It seems to me that these buses, which cost, well, I guess at least $500,000 or so, should have systems in place like modern cars for adjusting temperature. That's basically what it is. Because a lot of times I go on the buses in the evening and the AC is on and it is cold. And I have to go like this. So you either have to bring like some type of a sweater or a thin jacket or something like that to weather the freezing temperature. So that's basically what my concern is about that. So let's see, let me look down here. Some of these things do not have to do specifically with the buses. One of these things is, periodically I call PSTA to get information for whatever thing, or whatever, and the music on hold is so irritating. I don't know if many of you have called the PSTA number and been put on hold. It's this short soundbite that just repeats over and over and over again. It's too short. It should be like a long piece of music or something that doesn't repeat. So that's in case you have to be put on hold for sometimes 10 or 15 minutes, which is unfortunate, but that's the way it goes sometimes. The importance of keeping the buses completely still for a person who's disabled, like I am temporarily. It's very important to keep that bus completely stopped until the person is seated, because if you start moving just a little bit, I'm just about ready to sit into the seat, sometimes the bus drivers will start moving, not in a normal fashion, but they'll just let off the brakes or something, and that'll just cause a problem with keeping balance, which is important. Because I know for me, I have a compromised sense of balance, which varies. So I just want to say to all the bus drivers if the person requests to stay still, to please stay still until they give the high sign to go. And let's see. The PSTA, when you call the PSTA number, you have to listen for a certain number of minutes before the option to access the operator is available. It really would be nice to have it where you can do it immediately and not have to listen to all the chit-chat of the message. So you can go immediately to an operator and not have to endure the frustration of waiting. It's the waiting part. If you do, it depends on how much you call. Sometimes I call maybe several times a month or whatever, but it'd be nice to have the operator option right at the beginning. That's basically it. Let's see.
Your 3 minutes is up, but if you want to go ahead and wrap things up, I'll give you a few more seconds.
Do I have a chance to talk later, or is it just strictly a 3 minute?
Just during this time, but what I'd like to ask, if maybe Brad, someone from staff could have a conversation with them, because you're giving some really great feedback, and I want to make sure we don't miss anything here. So maybe someone from our staff can chat with you and make sure we get all of your notes.
That's fine. Thanks for your time.
Yes, and thank you so much for joining us and giving us that valuable feedback.
And Henry's back there on the AC.
Oh, good. Okay, great. Did we have any other requests for comment? All right, thank you. We'll close public comment now and go on to our consent agenda. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Cox, I'm sorry, I didn't see.
Madam Chair, I totally want to agree on everything that Mark said there. I mean, the bus is really, when I ride, I'll find it really, really cold, and I'll bring a jacket with me. Some of the buses moving before I'm seated creates difficulty. They're all valid points, and we appreciate Mark as a writer, truly. Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely, thank you. And Commissioner Schulman?
Thank you. I just wanted to suggest if we're going to look at our on-hold music, that potentially we look at some of the performers that performed on the Sunrunner to have them record, and we can cycle through different songs and promote our local artists. I just wanted to put that out there. I don't want to forget and lose that later. Thank you.
It's a good idea.
Thank you. I love that. Okay, so then back to the consent agenda. Do we have any items that a board member wishes to pull or someone who might want to make a motion?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. If we could please open the voting system. And if everyone could please enter your votes. 9. All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, now for our committee updates. First, I want to welcome Mr. Ron Pierce from RSA Consulting, who is joining us in person today to brief us on the completed but very active 2024 state legislative session in Tallahassee, as well as next steps with our delegation. After that, we'll receive our track update from Mark O'Hara, and then I'll provide the Fort Pinellas report. Good morning, Ron.
Good morning, Madam Chair, and it's so good to be here in person, board members. So very active in Tallahassee for sure. There was a lot going on in Tallahassee this year regarding transit. I know that at least 4 of you have already heard this update at the Legislative Committee, so I'll try to go through it pretty quick for you all. Let me start with money. Budget was $117 billion this year. Governor has not signed the budget yet, by the way. He has not received it from the legislature. Probably will receive it sometime in May. A lot of people have been asking, well, session ended, on March the 8th. Why doesn't the governor have the budget and all the pieces of legislation yet? Is because session was early. Most like the budget and most pieces of legislation doesn't go into effect until July the 1st. So he had plenty of time to get it to him for him to take action on it. So again, we probably expect the budget to go to him sometime in May. He'd have 2 weeks to react to it at that point in time. I think he'll act on it pretty quick. I do think there'll be some vetoes, but again, this is just me guessing. I don't think there'll be a record number of vetoes. I think it'll be light compared to the last couple of years, most likely. Budget, if you're wondering, against about $117 billion, which is about the same as last year. And a lot of people said, well, isn't that kind of plateauing? If you look at last year's number, there was a ton of federal dollars that were still being included from the hurricane, from some of the COVID dollars that still had to be spent. So all the federal dollars are now out the door. So there was actually a significant number of growth from a general revenue standpoint. All the federal dollars they had to spend over the last 2 years have kind of all dried up. So if you talk about the budget as it relates to PSTA, let me mention 2 things. Number one, if you're talking about just transportation disadvantage dollars, there was actually an increase this year in total funding for transportation disadvantage. I'm rounding to just about $60 million. If you look at the formula that they have, Pinellas County actually makes out really well as a part of that. So there will be an increase for Pinellas County, and more importantly, that will mean an increase ultimately for PSTA. I think the one pause for concern that we have is the innovative grant funding program keeps going down. A few years ago it was $10 million. A couple years ago it was $6 million. This year they funded it at $3 million. So they keep kind of going the wrong way on that. Partially because they're arguing that they're not spending all the money that's there for that program, number one. And number two is they want to start limiting programming that, I'll use our late shift program as an example. You can apply for those innovative grant dollars, but only up for 3 years. After 3 years, you have to fund it from another source. So because of that, that's why I think they're reducing some of the funding. So let me stick on transportation disadvantage. There was a major bill out there, Senate Bill 1380, which has not been signed by the governor yet. We fully expect the governor to sign that bill. 2 major components of the bill that I'll share with you, and then also share with you some things that did not pass as a part of that bill that would have had a major impact on PSD and some of our partners. Number one, biggest thing is it's going to restructure the Transportation Disadvantage Board. That was being pushed by the governor's office. Again, we fully expect the governor to sign that. So a kind of reorganization of the overall board. And then more specifically, from what we gathered, it would look like they were trying to react to an issue that happened in South Florida, because there were some additional things that passed this year regarding providing additional training to drivers, but more specifically is when there is an incident, there's a new process on how you have to report that to the state. Again, we think that was kind of being driven from South Florida. I can tell you two major components that were in the bill that would have had impact on us is, number one, would have required cameras in every car that was doing any type of transportation disadvantaged trips, number one. Number two, also having some type of a tracking system in those vehicles. That did not pass. They're basically going to go study that issue, then come back. But that was ultimately not included in 1380. So that was something that Brad and us and other folks shared our concerns with the bill sponsors on that, just making sure there was no unintended consequences on us having the ability ultimately to be able to provide those services to our constituents. So I'll mention two other bills. House Bill 287, which has not been signed by the governor yet. And this has been out there the last couple of years. It's the first time this actually has made it to the finish line. Is it actually limits the Department of Transportation that they can only spend 20% of the DOT trust fund on public transit. That sounds a little bit scary. Brad and others was able to do a really good job of kind of limiting on what they were kind of capturing as public transit. So if you kind of look at what that number is today, it's probably what, 10 or 11, 12%. So we're well below that. But it has been out there for the last 3 or 4 years. It's the first time it's actually gotten into a bill. It has passed. We do expect the governor to sign that. Should have no impact in the short term on public transit. And again, obviously, it's something that they could change in the future, or change from a different funding source, by the way. So if you're doing transit, a lot of the transit dollars don't have to come out of the DOT trust fund. It can come out of other sources. So again, I don't think there'll be any short-term impacts on PSTA. House Bill 1301, which has been signed by the governor. 3 or 4 things that I'm about to mention to you will sound very similar to what was in the local bill by Representative Cheney. That did pass. Number one, lane elimination. So any type of lane repurposing would require a supermajority vote of that local government. Number two, eminent domain. Again, changes the vote on that to a supermajority, but also more importantly, it also requires some additional public meetings if any type of transit organization is going to use eminent domain. Let me remind you, PSTA does have the ability, you have to, as a part of your special act, to use eminent domain. To the best of my knowledge, I don't think we've ever used eminent domain as a part of that. So again, should not have any short-term impact on us. Number 3 is advertising. There was a lot of discussion in Tallahassee regarding advertising as it regards transit organizations. At one point, it was proposed, it never got onto a bill, but we actually saw it in a proposed amendment. One of the ideas was potentially as if you're a transit organization that accepts $1 of public funding, you would not be able to do any type of advertising on the outside of the bus. That obviously, that did not pass, that went away. Now what they did pass ultimately is that you can advertise, but you can't basically use public dollars to pay for the advertising for the bus wrap. We don't do that today anyways. Most of the advertising that we do on our buses are obviously paid as a part of the deal for the advertisement that goes along with that. So again, it shouldn't have any short-term impact on the organization. There was a lot of discussion. If you look at the 3 or 4 issues I'm mentioning, probably the advertising piece had the most discussion in Tallahassee because it has a revenue impact. So it has a revenue impact on transit agencies. Last one is it was limiting the administrative cost for transit organizations to be 20%. Again, this does not have an impact on PSTA. This was being more directed at the transit agency out of Jacksonville. So, but that was included. Brad and the association and a number of groups did a really, really good job of kind of defining what administrative fees are to make sure that 20% impact would have less of an impact moving forward. Because obviously the 20% impact is going to have an impact on the large transit organizations. And so obviously we're in that category. So that was something that we were active on. So let me share with you a couple things that did not pass that we probably need to pay attention to moving forward, and I'm going to end with the local bill. Number one, there was a special district bill that moved at the beginning of session that required that any special district that had ad valorem authorities, which we do, that would have to go back out, that authority would have to go back out to the voters every 10 years. That was not included. It actually came out of the bill relatively early in session. We talked to a couple of bill sponsors on that, and that ended up coming out of the bill. Number two is, the next two issues were a part of the House Finance and, the House Ways and Means tax package. So it did not pass. It passed the House. I expect at least one of these two issues to come back next year. Number one is, if you're a local government, if you're a county and you pass a local tax referendum, a surtax, that would have to go back out to be renewed by the voters every 10 years. Obviously, some of these surtaxes that are passed by county governments are for 15 and 20 and 30 years because they want the ability to bond them. That would have a huge impact. That was not included. I don't think that issue is going to come back. I do think the next issue I'm about to mention will come back. That we're going to require that tourist development tax dollars, that anytime a tax dollar, any type of a tourist development tax came up, it would have to go out to the voters every 6 years to be renewed. That would have an impact, a huge impact from a local government, from a tourist development standpoint. A lot of your communities would be impacted by that. I don't think they're going to come back with the language to try to put it back to referendum every 6 years. I do think the legislature is getting very tired of being the referee when local governments come to Tallahassee and try to keep eroding what the use of the tourist development tax dollars are. So I think there's a world that we live in next year. I think the House is really going to take a close look at tourist development tax dollars, how they can be used more importantly, what flexibility does the local government have on using those dollars, and not having to come back to Tallahassee every year trying to get, to erode that. So I'm going to give you a quick example. Some folks want to use tourist development tax dollars now for affordable housing. Some want to use it for infrastructure. You could probably make some type of a point there that it could be tied back to tourism, but again, currently today, you cannot technically use like affordable housing cannot be used for tourist development tax dollars cannot be used for affordable housing. So let me end with the local bill 1487 by Representative Cheney, which did not pass, obviously would have had a huge impact on us as an organization. It passed the House. Obviously Senator Rouson pulled it from the local bill calendar in the Senate, so it was not heard by the full Senate. I fully expect that bill to come back next year. If you look at what was originally in the bill, a lot of the concerns I think that Representative Cheney had are now being addressed through House Bill 1301, which has been signed by the governor. We are actually meeting with Representative Cheney, I think, next week. Brad and Mayor Saraki and I are going to go sit down, have a conversation, and talk about what does next year look like. Does she still have concerns? If she's going to move forward, what does that look like from a governance standpoint? Are there any other issues? I want to make a point, too, that a lot of the concerns she already had, A, is being addressed through House Bill 1301, and number two is, I know you have all been hearing some of her concerns, and I think I've taken action on some of those as a board as well. So, again, I fully expect in some form that bill will come back next year. We have a long off season, which is good. Session ended in March. We now are dealing with an election season. Obviously, there's no committee weeks or hopefully nothing that we'll have to deal with from a Tallahassee perspective until after the election. 2 weeks after the election, we'll have organizational session where the new Senate President and Speaker will be officially designated. New House members will be officially designated as well. Then there may be a committee week in December, be more training, really I think from a business standpoint, from bills being heard, not until January and February. Session goes back to the traditional calendar of starting in March. So we have a long runway to kind of get to not only meeting with Representative Cheney, but as the chair mentioned, meeting with other members of the delegation as well to try to address, I think some of the concerns that was being voiced in Tallahassee regarding PSTA, but also I think trying to address some of the misinformation that was out there as well as it relates to our budget and some other things as well. So I will stop there. Brad, please let me know if I missed anything, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Brad, did you want to add anything?
Sure. Thank you, Ron. That was quite detailed. And that was kind of the tip of the iceberg. I really appreciate
all the efforts that you and your team did for us while we were up there. And I completely agree. I think the next step is to try to get meetings, way before the next session with all of the delegation to try to just better, paint the picture of what is really going on at PSTA. Because I think there just was a lot of things I heard, and I know you heard a lot more than I did, that just were not accurate about what our budget is and what things are going on. So we're gonna try internally to be more transparent about those kinds of things and with our budget and everything. But try to in the off season, like you say, get with the delegation. Yeah.
All right. Commissioner Schulman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ron, just a quick question about the House Bill 287. And you may not know the answer, but I was wondering if the limit of the spending of the DOT trust fund to 20% doesn't impact organizations, right? So you said it was 10, 11, 12% is the current drawdown from the trust fund. Is there a reason why 20% was put in?
That's a really good question. So the bill that 287 was probably a bill that was being, I know the road builders were involved in that bill and a couple other organizations. So, and DOT, I think, was fine with it because, again, today when we met with DOT, I think they said today around 10, 11% is being, given through transportation trust funds. So that's a really good question. One of the answers we got too is because if you look at the way transit dollars work, the state can, there's a lot of money there from a transit standpoint, but where local government hands are tied, as you all know, you need matching to be able to get, in many cases, access to those dollars. So I think if they look at the number of transit projects that are either A, out there today, or B, in the pipeline, I don't think they believe there's going to be any impact in the short term on this. And again, the good news is this can be changed, right? So if you fast forward 10 years and there's all this new transit in the state of Florida, like a lot of people are pointing to Brightline. Brightline will not be considered technically public transit, number one, and number two is the governor kind of drew a line in the sand when he signed House Bill 1301, not wanting any public dollars going into the infrastructure for Brightline at this point in time.
Yeah, and I understand the bright side is that it can be changed. Of course, the downside is it can be changed, right? So, one of my concerns is that it's put in at a level that is innocuous, that doesn't mean anything to anybody, so that it becomes easier in the future to be like, well, now 2 years from now, it's 17%, and then it's 15, right? So, and it just becomes, oh, well, we've always done this sort of thing. So, and we see that with a lot of other policies that come out to kind of go under the radar with a number that doesn't mean anything, just so we can start the process of kind of tightening that. So I wasn't sure if in the conversations up there, if there was anything specific, so.
No, and I'll add that, so Senator Hooper was involved with this, by the way. So we had a lot of conversations with Senator Hooper, making sure there would not be an impact on PSTA. And to your point, I think Senator Hooper and Senator DeSigley will be in very key positions over the next couple of years. We expect Senator Hooper to be the chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee. We expect Senator DeSigley to be in a very key position as well, dealing with transportation. So because of that, I think for the next 2 years, we'll make sure we're protecting our flank, to your point. Beyond that, it's something we're going to have to, keep an eye on in the future. Other questions?
Anyone else? All right, well, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
for that recap. That was excellent.
My pleasure. Thank you all. And again, thank you. Having board members come to Tallahassee during session, by the way, I appreciate all of your efforts there. Brad was spent more time in Tallahassee than he wanted to this year because of everything that we had going on. The legislators see me all the time. So having board members and you all come up and be a part of the process and share with them your concerns and, more importantly, your constituents' concerns was very, very helpful this year. And that's something we'll want to do in the future. But I just want to thank you for that. Awesome.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And thanks in advance to Vice Chair Siraki for agreeing to join them to meet with Representative Cheney.
Absolutely.
I hope that goes well.
I'm ready.
All right. Excellent. All right. Thanks again, Ron. Next, we'll have our Transit Riders Advisory Committee meeting, and it looks like we are joined virtually by Mark O'Hara for that update. Good morning, Mark.
Hi, good morning. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. You get the delegate from Tallahassee, but I get to join you via Zoom. All right. Good morning, Chair Driscoll, Mr. Miller, and esteemed board members. TRAC met virtually on April 16th, 2024. Last week, TRAC enjoyed a couple of productive brainstorming sessions with staff. The first was about our annual initiative to increase our engagement with the public as PSTA brand ambassadors in hopes of increasing ridership. We discussed some of the tools we would like, such as an updated fact sheet of common misconceptions about PSTA and public transit. So we are better prepared to face down some of the misinformation we regularly encounter about the system and this industry. The second discussion we had was with Ross Silvers, PSTA's ADA and Community Relations Officer, regarding some new changes to PSTA Access and Mobility on Demand, or MOD program. MOD, by the way, is an industry-leading PSTA innovation where the agency partners with private sector carriers such as Uber and Lyft to offer same-day transportation options to access riders. Mr. Silvers provided us with a comprehensive overview of the two programs and engaged with us to help come up with ideas on how to reduce their overall cost while continuing to provide excellent service to riders. Several of the committee members mentioned how they use both services for trips for greater flexibility. For instance, they will use Access to take them to a doctor's appointment and then rely on MOD to get them home, since medical visit timeframes can vary widely from one another. The committee is also very pleased and excited about the finalization of the land swap between the city of Clearwater and a new and badly needed transfer center to replace Park Street Terminal. Our next meeting will be at PSTA on May 14th, 2024 at 4 p.m. As always, you are all welcome to attend. And I would also like to add, as a Car-Free St. Pete member now, we have our meeting tonight about the 175 Boulevard project, which has been moved to Campbell Park Recreation Center. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mark? All right, that was a great update. Thanks for all you do. Please pass our gratitude along to the other committee members. Next, for the Forward Pinellas update, the Forward Pinellas Board met last on April 10th, 2024. The board approved and accepted the PPC and MPO annual audits for FY23, which met all applicable financial requirements. An update was provided by FDOT staff on plans for US 19 North with an overview of projects that can be considered with the intent of improving highway capacity while also providing safe accommodations for bicycle, pedestrian, and transit rider access, as well as the viability of local businesses in the Palm Harbor and Tarpon Springs area. The board was also provided updates on the Advantage Pinellas 2050 plan, including the transit system plan component that identifies top performing corridors that with the right investments and strategic land use planning could best foster redevelopment and growth in ridership, improve transit service quality and connectivity, and benefit the overall transit network performance. The board also received an update on the active transportation plan component, which identifies a vision for a highly connected and accessible trail and bicycle facility network in the county. PSTA will be receiving an update on the Advantage Pinellas 2050 plan at our meeting in May. Finally, staff presented the draft multimodal transportation priorities, which will be coming back to the board for approval in June. The next regular Forward Pinellas board meeting will be held on May 8th, 2024. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. Commissioner Gao.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make sure PSTA is going to hear that Forward Pinellas presentation in May. Is that going to be the same presentation that you heard, or is it going to be more focused on just public transit?
It would be, I think what they're planning to do is then an overall with a focus on transit. Right. You know, just with them reading the audience, if you will.
Right.
So there would be a focus on transit, but I'm sure if you had questions beyond that, they would be happy to include that.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? All right, perfect. We have, we'll go on to our action items. And our action item today is for a contract for construction management services, specifically for our new Clearwater Transit Center. Sorry, it's very exciting, so I had to put a little flair on that one. It's just amazing, and I have to say before he starts, being at that signing ceremony for the land swap deal and seeing some of the folks who have been working on this long before I even came on the PSTA board, that wanted this to happen. The joy was just felt throughout the event, and it was all smiles. And I am just so proud of the work that everyone did to make this happen, and especially Commissioner Albritton, who's been such a lion in this effort. So, yeah, it's exciting stuff. And today, Abhishek Dayal, our Director of Project Management, will take us through this item. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. Happy to be here and talk about this really important project and important item. So the requested action today is approval of a 3-year contract for program management, construction management services with HDR Inc. for not to exceed amount of $2.3 million for our number one priority for this agency, which is the Clearwater Transit Center. I'm going to take you back to the slides as to why this is necessary. I know we covered this last month, but it is important to remind the group why this is important. And it all goes back to our Park Street terminal that has been in existence since 1982. It's a very important transit facility in North Pinellas County. As I said, it was built in 1982. It's not ADA compliant. It was built prior to ADA laws being enacted. The facility was built with only 8 bus bays. That's now 15 buses use that 8 bus bay facility, which means almost half the buses have to park outside. People have to go in and out of the facility to get on or off the bus. And so it is over capacity for several years. We've also had significant structural and roof leaking issues at the Park Street terminal, as you can see from some of the photos here. That leads to costly annual maintenance. And so it is long overdue to have a new terminal, a multimodal terminal that is true to what we operate today. And we've also had some roof clearance issues, as I noted last month also, particularly with our newer buses that were bought back in 2017 and onwards. So we are looking to bring on HDR, and HDR will provide full and part-time services for design and construction oversight of this brand-new facility. They'll also provide as-needed technical services, something that my staff, my team cannot provide, like doing independent cost estimating, negotiating with contractors on getting a fair, reasonable pricing for materials and labor, scheduling oversight, and so on. And more importantly, stakeholder outreach and stakeholder coordination, something I'm going to talk more about in the later slides. Now, HDR team, they're now no strangers to PSTA. They've successfully managed the Sunrunner project, again, under budget. The team is pictured here. In fact, one of the team members, James Van Steenberg, is sitting right there in the audience. He's also going to help us with successfully delivering the Clearwater Transit Center project. So the project, as I noted previously, is a multimodal facility with modern facilities, something that we operate today with EV charging infrastructure. It's going to have connections to our bike facility. It's going to have connections to our Uber, Lyft, our private transportation providers. So it's truly going to be integrated facility so that it meets the needs of our riders. So speaking of coordination, there are several stakeholders involved in this project. And HDR team will be working very extensively with all those stakeholders. One of those stakeholders and a key stakeholder and a partner is the city of Clearwater. They are building their City Hall project, as Commissioner Albritton knows. We'll be working with them pretty closely while the construction of the City Hall is going on. The committee also approved the CSX agreement as part of the consent agenda. So we'll be working with CSX pretty closely, and HDR team will be making sure that the CSX operations goes on safely while the construction is going on for our project. And then FDOT will be a key partner as well. This site is surrounded on two sides by DOT roadways, so working with DOT is going to be very critical. And recognizing that we have so many stakeholders, we have so many partners, we actually involve them in the selection of the project management, construction management firm. So we had members from DOT, we had members from Pinellas County, as well as City of Clearwater as part of our evaluation team, and they recommended HDR as the selected team. We did have a pretty good discussion at the Finance Committee about this, and Commissioner Schulman, based on your comment, we did update the report, the agenda write-up, so that should clarify all the analysis that was done to arrive at coming at HDR as the selected firm. Now, this is an org chart that I provided last month that showed how the various contractors and the vendors are going to be in this project. HDR, as you can see, plays a very critical role in this project in that they will be overseeing the design firm, that's CDM Smith, and then a future construction contractor that we will procure next year in summer. All these services, including HDRs, they're all, the costs for those services are all included in the capital budget that you all already approved. And these are mostly paid for with federal and state grants. So I'm not looking for any additional funding as part of this contract. It's just using the funding that was already approved to bring HDR on for this project. So finally, the recommendation is a 3-year contract with HDR. For PMCM services for a not-to-exceed amount of $2.3 million for Clearwater Transit Center project. With that, Madam Chair, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Commissioner Albritton?
Okay. So what standard of lead certification are we going for on this?
So, Commissioner Albritton, we are looking at different options. As you know, there are different tiers of LEED certification. There's a bronze, silver, and gold. We are looking at the design right now. We're at 30% design, and we are looking to see what level of certification we'd be able to get to. Certainly, that's going to be balanced by the cost of the facility, what we can afford. And so we'll probably have that determination with HDR's help, of course.
So I'll make a suggestion that, we could build to whatever standard of LEED. The city of Clearwater builds to silver, but we don't go through the certification process because that's a big extra expense. We just go ahead and build to the standard. And so that would save us some money on that too. Just an idea. Thank you.
Great suggestion. Thank you.
Commissioner Cox?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Abhishek, for everything you've done for this project. I mentioned in the Finance Committee a concern about the ADA noncompliance of the current facility, and you'd stated that it was mostly the ramps that go up for the folks that are non-ambulatory. And is there any, because it'll be several years before we have this new facility, is there any way that we could just bring those up to standard, to what the standard is?
We can look at some temporary solutions as opposed to overhaul of the facility.
Sure.
And see what we can do to make sure it's ADA compliant.
I mean, I just think it's a good idea to preclude any kind of issues for
Absolutely.
the next several years. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Just going back to the LEED certification, is that, by any chance, is that the certification a requirement with any of the funding that we're receiving? Is that tied to it in any way?
We have mentioned lead certification as as something that we would do as part of grants, but to Commissioner Albritton's point, we can certainly demonstrate that we have designed and built to that level, but just not sought any certification or like a certificate that we've done it. So
Okay.
I think there are certain ways we can demonstrate that we have met the requirements that were stated.
Okay, got it, thanks. Anyone else? All right, did we have any public comment on this issue? Okay, all right, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion to approve the contract?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 6A. Could we open the voting system, please? If everyone could please enter your votes. And the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. For our information items today, we'll first go to our FY 2025 budget assumptions. Debbie Laus, our CFO, and Kevin Lai, our budget analyst, are here to provide the FY 2025 budget assumptions, which will form the foundation for next year's budget plans, but also set us up for this Friday's board workshop on the budget. Good morning, you two.
Well, good morning, everyone. Debbie Leas, Chief Financial Officer here. And this morning, I am joined by Kevin Lai, who's been such a help to me over the last few months of working on the budget. He's our budget analyst. And as you know, that we've been without a budget manager, so I've been wearing a couple hats. But I'm very pleased to announce as well this morning, we have a new financial planning and analysis manager, Tricia Lewis, who just started. This is day number 3.
Welcome, Tricia.
I'm almost as excited about Tricia being here as the Clearwater Transit Center was. So, very happy about that. But I'm going to turn this over to Kevin and lead us off with this.
Thank you, Debbie. So good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, members of the board. Kevin Lai, Budget Analyst with FP&A. So as you can see, our budget process is one that spans through several months, and we've been working with various members of staff to build our FY 2025 budget. Currently, we're on track to present to you a draft version of the budget in June, but today we're here to talk to you about our key assumptions for our operating budget. So our goal is to present to you a balanced budget. We're appreciative of the board's contributions through our different workshops this year, and on that note, I'll hand it back to Debbie.
Thank you, Kevin. Today, as Kevin mentioned, we're going to talk about operating assumptions. Next month, we'll be bringing to you a capital budget and our program of projects where we apply to FTA for funding. And as we mentioned, we like to see that we have not only a balanced budget, but that we reflect the strategic vision of the board within the financial constraints that we have. One of the things that we do here at PSTA is multi-year budget forecasting. And there's many different benefits to doing this, and I've listed a few on the slide here, but I think the most important one that is on there is understanding the impact of the decisions you make today on the future. Some decisions have a one-time benefit, so others do not. So it's important as we go through the process that we look at this on a holistic basis. We want to be very nimble in what we do as we look forward. We're in an economy where we're looking at potential of a recession, so we're looking at a lot of the labor costs that have gone up, which is fueling that, which is keeping interest rates high, which is affecting inflation rates with the vendors that we deal with. I'm going to look just at sort of the top areas within each of the categories of revenues and expenses. In your packet, you have all the details of the key assumptions. It's a starting point for us as we work to build the budget. As we go through the process and as we come to you, but not only in June, but in September, this is just the beginning, and we will be refining numbers and assumptions as we go through it. On the revenue side, we have 3 key areas of revenue: our ad valorem, or property taxes, our passenger fares, and operating assistance. So let me just start by talking about our property tax. We are currently at .7500 mils, which is our maximum rate here. And right now, we're getting the early assumptions from the property appraiser of what we anticipate the property taxes we receive will go up by. This year, it's at 5.5%. Last year, to give you a comparison, it was close to about 12%. What Kevin did for me was take an analysis of various years, over the past number of years, to see how well these early assumptions out of Tallahassee, how accurate are they? Unfortunately, they're not accurate because they're very, very conservative. And what we found is there's about a little over 4% delta. What I mean by that is we're seeing 5.5%. On the average, if it's a 4% delta, I would anticipate a 9.5%. Probably the lowest percent delta that we had over the last number of years was maybe in the 2 to 2.5% range. So for us here at PSTA, we offer one service, and that's our public transportation. When you look at municipalities in the county, they have various areas with which to look at to be able to make cuts and tweaks and different things that maybe aren't as noticeable to the public as it is when you offer one service. So we'll be watching this very closely as we go through the process. Now, passenger fares, we got a lot of wonderful input on passenger fares and ridership from the board at our first workshop. We'll be delving into that more at the second workshop coming up on Friday. And what we want to take a look at is engaging the community, and you heard from Stephanie today, different ways in which we're doing that, and to improve upon that, looking at sponsorships, and increasing our pass programs that we have here with the C-Pass, U-Pass. So we got a lot of great ideas. We're going to build on that to help us make up for any losses that we've seen in other areas. Now, operating assistance. We get a significant amount of operating assistance, and we get it from basically two main sources, the federal government through FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, and the state. On the federal side, every transit agency in the country gets formula funds, and those formula funds may be used for either operations or for capital. Here at PSTA, we use the majority of the funds for our capital, because we get an ongoing benefit for many, many years to come, rather than using it for a one-time, such as for our preventative maintenance. We do use it for that, a very small piece, and that pays for our mechanics. When you do that, we've been very fortunate here where we keep it flat for about the last dozen years. You don't become dependent on it to run operations. The federal government does have, from time to time, cutbacks on things. So we want to be very mindful of that. State operating funds come to us in a variety of sources. You heard from Ron Pierce this morning on the TD state reimbursement, so I'm glad to see the TD money will be going up. We get block grant money for operations, as well as money for running our regional routes, as well as other reimbursements. In the budget for next year will be two new state operating funds. One's for ferry service, and one is for the 34LX. So that'll be some exciting things to go through for next year. On the expense side, I'm just going to look at a couple of the top areas. Salaries and fringes in every organization are generally the highest percentage. When we look at what we have at 59%, as we've talked about at various meetings, we are one of the most cost-efficient organizations, transit organizations in the country. That is extremely low. When I look across the bay, they are at about 73 to 75% on any given year. One of the things that will be impacting our budget is SEIU bargaining unit. For our largest, we have two bargaining units, both SEIU. One is for our supervisors, and the other is for our operators, customer service reps, and our maintenance folks. And that is expiring at the end of this year. So that will have an influence on our budget. And then the other area that I have concerns about is health insurance. Last year, we were very fortunate to be able to negotiate a 0% increase. I don't think in all my 35 years of experience I've ever seen that. I don't know what we did, but I don't know that we'll repeat it. So I'm looking more of a normal increase of about 7%. In the state of Florida, the normal increase on an annual basis is about 7 to 9%. So I'm looking at a more return to normal this year. Now, one of the things, before I go on to this slide, Kevin said to me, what about fuel? Kevin is our fuel expert when it comes to locking in fuel rates. Here at PSTA, we obviously still have a lot of diesel buses or diesel hybrid buses. What we do is we lock in rates to help control the budget on our diesel fuel, but we're also very excited as we look forward in the assumptions of having electric buses. That will save us significant dollars as we move forward. Now, speaking of buses, one of the things that we'll be talking about as we go through the summer and into the fall is our community bus plan. That will be looking for effective delivery of service within the fiscal constraints that we have. On Friday, we'll be talking about this at table number 4. So that will be an exciting table. Not as exciting as table number 3, which is me, but that will be exciting as well. One of the areas that we do spend a lot of money on is our outsourcing. We have a lot of privatized services here, approximately $20 million worth. So what we're going to do is take a look at how we deliver those services. Commissioner Cox has been very good in helping us over the last few years with improving the efficiency of our paratransit service. That relates to cost savings. In addition, we're going to be looking at contract amendments potentially with some of our other providers and finding ways to cut costs. Now with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Schulman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Debbie, a couple of questions. Some of them I brought up at the planning committee meeting. The first one, and this is not really a question, but really it was a request at that meeting, and I'm making the same one here, is that for property tax revenue, right, we're showing a 5.5% increase. And I realize that is the revenue received as an agency, and that's what we're using for planning purposes. However, when members of the public look at that, many of them will look at that and say, I am paying 5.5% more on my homesteaded property, and that is not accurate. And we hear that, we heard Ron talking about how we have to go to Tallahassee and talk about our operating budget and where these numbers come from, and there's misconceptions about these things. So I think every chance we have an opportunity to just be a little bit more specific, it's helpful in those conversations. So if it were me, I would add an asterisk to that number and say homesteaded properties capped at 3%, right? Just so that, because we've all been to meetings where people talk about how their taxes are going up more than they actually are because they read it somewhere else and they don't understand the inner workings. So we need to be consistent with that messaging.
I thought that was a great comment. We're working on putting together a list of all the municipalities and what the property taxes are, including those that don't currently participate.
I also think in documents like this, it's helpful just to, because again, the public is pulling these documents, putting them into their own documents, and so we need to just remind them what those numbers are. They're not doing the research on their own to get into those details usually. The other item I had was on just a question on the passenger fares.
Yeah.
Do you know how much of our passenger fares are for the one-time or one-way trip? Right, so the passenger fare bucket includes a lot of different items.
Oh, I don't have that specifically. I can get that very quickly, but I don't have it in front of me for just a one ride trip.
Well, how much of our passenger fare revenue is one-way trip usage?
No return?
Well, I mean, so it's listed as a one-way trip fare is $2.25. What I want to know is how many of our trips, how much of that, we have a bucket that's passenger fare revenue. How much of that are people tapping and paying a one-way trip or paying cash, right? That sort of thing.
Okay.
Versus using a pass, using, any of these other mechanisms.
Yeah, the cash one way.
Right, so that would be interesting for me,
Okay.
especially for our conversation on Friday.
Okay.
When we're talking about some of our budgeting. I noticed in the homework, we talked about ways to cut costs if there's a deficit. We didn't actually talk about ways to increase revenue on that page. So wanted to at least understand what that impact would be. And then finally, just a comment that would be helpful for me, and you guys do it here, is in each section you put, and I'm looking at the summary document, you put approximately how much of the budget each area is. But then especially when it comes to like fuel, right, then I'm having to multiply times a positive, then take out a negative, and then multiply times a positive to figure out what those dollar amounts are, what's the difference.
Oh,
So-
you want to see dollars on?
So if under each percentage, if we could have the dollar amount, so that it's easier when it's a straight line, especially if it's zero, right? Then it's easy to figure out what the dollar is. But when you have these numbers changing back and forth and you're trying to compare one to the other, I'm having to go back and forth and do the math constantly and then remember what I wrote down, sort of thing. So
We could easily do that. We do it for ourselves, so we can easily pop it in there.
I also think what may be helpful, while I love absolutely love the budget, the summary document that has the explanations, is a one page that has all of those blocks at the end, so that we can then see all of those items instead of flipping back and forth, especially as, again, it came to mind when I was comparing our diesel costs versus our utility costs, right? Expecting our diesel to go down and our utilities to go up for electricity, and trying to compare those two. It was a little bit harder than it could have been. So just a helpful suggestion. That's a good suggestion. All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Cox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Debbie, and thank you, Kevin. The 34LX funding, and I mentioned this in our Finance Committee, but I kind of forgot what you had told me. Is that going to be continuous all the way up to the Largo Terminal, or is it just the portion up to 22nd Avenue, 54th to 22nd Avenue South? Or do you know?
Oh, maybe.
Fred knows.
To be determined. We are working on the plan for that service.
Okay.
I'm not sure if there's any plan to go all the way to Largo. There's a plan, we're debating, and we're working with the city of St. Petersburg also on whether or not it continues on beyond US 19 South up to Pinellas Park, or if it just goes to Grand Central to start.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. And also on the, our MOD multiple trips that we assess the extra fees, do we know how much money we have generated from that since we've been doing it since January?
Well, I've heard we haven't generated a lot of revenue from it, but I am getting a full report tomorrow sent to me about what impact it's had on ridership, or what how many people are hitting the cap.
Okay.
Yeah, so
So we can include that in our workshop then on Friday?
I'll see about that. I'll try.
Yeah, please do, please do. I think it's important that we address that, being that our paratransit costs are actually about 13% of our operating budget too. And they seem to be ever increasing. And so we will look at that. Thank you so much. That's all.
Thank you, and seems like a good time to remind everyone that the budget workshop is scheduled for 2 hours on Friday. And I have something right after that. So, yeah. All right, Commissioner Fig Sanders.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. And this is more of a reminder for me. When we look at the diesel fuel appropriation on it, I know that the fuel price is going to be locked in, but I'm trying to remember what the timeline was for us to acquire those electric buses. I know based on funding, we're not getting all 60, of course, at one time. Do you know what the timeline is, and how would that sway the locked-in piece that we're paying for the diesel fuel?
That's a great question, because I don't lock in 100% of the fuel, and number one. And the reason I don't do that, I usually do about 63, 65, somewhere in there, % of the fuel. And the reason I do that is you don't know what the market is going to do. I can control about, let's say, 65% of my budget by locking in. I leave the other piece unhedged to float with the marketplace. So if the marketplace drops, I'm going to save money. If I see the marketplace the price is going up, I can always lock in more. So with having that cushion in there, and we work closely with Henry on the receipt of the buses, so that we don't overbuy. We also look at it from weather standpoint, because we tend to use more diesel fuel in the hot months and running the cold buses, as the gentleman was talking about, but running the buses. So we try to look at it very carefully as to how much we lock in. Again, I can always lock in more. So we're going to be getting the buses, and it changes daily, but I'm going to say, I think, through 2026.
Okay, so,
Henry's-
and the reason why,
Henry's clarifying you.
okay, and the reason why I asked is because this is going through the fiscal year 2029, and I thought we would have had all 60 prior to that.
We will.
We will.
We will, okay, okay. All right, thank you, Chair.
Did Henry have anything to add to that? Did you want, are you good?
Okay, he's good.
Anyone else? All right. Looking forward to Friday. Thanks to both of you for that information. And as a reminder, the budget workshop is at 9 a.m. here on Friday.
11 a.m.
To 11. All right, next we have our reports and correspondence along with future meeting subjects. Brad, would you like to update us on the reports and the future meeting subjects?
I would. Good morning. So in your packet are the various reports about the February operating statistics, and regarding the good question about the introduction of more zero-emission electric buses, I would note that February 2024 was the first we saw a large spike in the number of kilowatt hours used for powering the buses, because we are starting to get some of the Gillig buses coming online, and they're being put into service now. That's the first time I've seen that. That it's up so substantially. Other things that are that we're monitoring that are up a lot are the UPass. UPass usage is up substantially, and we're working on a report update to the Pinellas County Schools, because a lot of that increase is due to the Pinellas County School students riding it a lot. Although, as a person with a person in Pinellas County Schools, I know there's only 18 more days left till school ends. So then the pass can be used all summer as well, though. And then finally, which the planning committee got a report on, the contactless payment, the ability to tap a credit card or a debit card, that's going gangbusters, up 3,000% in the last year since we introduced it. That's becoming even a bigger way that our customers can easily use, can easily pay the fare. They no longer need to necessarily know all the ins and outs of our fare payment or our structure. They just like you go to Starbucks or any place where you can just take your phone or your tappable card and ride the bus. And I know that I've seen more and more people when I've been riding the bus doing that same thing. As was mentioned, coming up, our next meeting is on Friday, the workshop, and I will resend out to the full board this afternoon, just in case, so you have it at the top of your email, the homework that we put together that will, it's not really homework, we're not gonna collect it and grade it. It's really you just to have and to help you feel like you're not coming in totally cold to the workshop, because then at the workshop, the plan is to take the key elements that we discussed at our first workshop back in February, and have 4 breakout tables where you'll rotate through all 4 tables and provide information relevant to the information we sent you in the homework. And again, the goal would be that we've sort of timed it so that you will get to go to all the tables, have a discussion, and then there'll be a report out, and then it'll be 11. And the definition of success of the workshop, to me, is that we get done by 11 on the day, and then I won't know the real success until Debbie comes back to you in June with a presentation of the budget, and you feel like you've had input, that you can see things in what we've put together as our budget plan that came out of these board discussions, board workshops. That's really what the goal of the meeting on Friday is. The other board-related thing I wanted to update you on was we do have some committee openings on the Finance Committee and Legislative Committee and Executive Committee that Rachel is going to be sending out a email to all of you. The way that works is that she'll send a poll if you have interest in serving on a committee, and she'll tell you like when the committees meet, etc. If you're interested, let her know, and then we're going to set up. I think we're just going to have it go to the executive committee to review the interest, and then try to make recommendations to fill the vacancies, and then the board will then vote on it next month, so we can get those filled. Later on this afternoon, after this meeting is over, I am honored to go on a bus ride with Congresswoman Kathy Castor, and I think perhaps our Secretary-Treasurer, Commissioner Fig Sanders, might be joining me.
I'm not sure.
Okay, maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe it'll be me and Congresswoman Castor by ourselves. We are going to be riding down to St. Petersburg, and she is going to be doing a press conference at USF to recognize the fiscal year 2024 federal community projects earmarks that she was able to secure in the budget. That was $1.1 million for a combination of PSTA electrical infrastructure funding and a new electric tram shuttle vehicle for the city of St. Petersburg for the pier down there. She's been very positive. When Chair Driscoll and I saw her in DC, she described how she's remembers when she's ridden the bus in the past and talked to riders, and so she wanted to do that again. It was originally planned for yesterday, but then the President of the United States
Decided to stop.
decided to stop by, and so we moved it to this afternoon. Okay, yeah. Congratulations to Kessia Harris, our IT director, for graduating this weekend in the APTA Emerging Leaders Program. That's exciting, and we're happy for her. And last but not least, I wanted to thank Chair Driscoll for the nice op-ed in the Tampa Bay Times that she wrote on Earth Day on Monday. Of course, every day riding public transit is an Earth Day. You're helping the Earth. But I thought that was a good opportunity to show how PSTA plays a key role in our community's sustainability.
Thank you.
Yeah, great job. That concludes my report.
All right. We will go to Commissioner Schulman.
Just looking to see if I beat him on the mic
No.
button there. So, a couple of questions, Brad. You mentioned that there's going to be an update for Pinellas County Schools on the UPass program.
Yeah.
Is that to staff, or is that in front of the board?
Well, I think the intent of the administrator is to provide it to the board, the school board.
Okay.
Yeah.
The school board.
Okay, so do we know when that's going to be?
No. I'll try to find out.
If we find out, I'd be interested to know when that presentation is going to take place.
Well, when we have the information that we're putting together, I'll send it. I'll send that out to the full PSTA board too.
Fantastic.
So you have it, yeah.
I appreciate that. The other thing I wanted to make sure when we're talking about the schools is that we do work with schools to promote the use of PSTA over the summer. Right, so
Yeah.
schools aren't in session, so they're not taking it to go to school, but jobs, activities, helping families out and parents move kids around. I want to make sure that we're at least thinking from a marketing perspective to be sending that information out prior to the end of the year. As far as committee vacancies, I did want to mention Commissioner Eggers had expressed interest in the Finance Committee. So make sure he has an opportunity to do that. But I did have a question about it going to the Executive Committee versus the Nominating Committee. Is that due to expediency? Because I know that there are folks on the Nominating Committee that had concerns about the process, and how people are getting appointed, and I don't want to skip that and cause a potential quandary later.
I think we can try to see if we can get a nominating committee nominating committee time that works. Because I agree with you, I understand that. I think we did change the rules and regulations to allow the executive committee to make appointments if needed, but it's a good point about the nominating committee having make sure everyone knows the process.
Well, and I'm not sure if we're allowed to do that via Zoom, in that we're just making a recommendation to the board of and the board ultimately then votes on that. But if we can do a Zoom for the nominating committee, that might make it something that we can take care of.
Mr. Zimmer?
If you're not making a decision, taking a vote, then you can do it. But if you're taking a vote, even to make a recommendation, you're gonna
Have to be in person or have a quorum in person.
Right, but if it's just informational and
Well, then it'd be
discussion.
But you'd have to vote
They
to
would
have a
vote on a
recommendation.
Right.
But if they're gonna vote on a recommendation, then you should be in person. Or a majority should be in person.
Understood. I just want to make sure that we have a defined process and we're not outside of those lanes. So we wouldn't have to redo it all again after the fact.
Good point.
And then another question, it wasn't necessarily in your reports, but do we have an update on the solar project here on the PSTA campus? Do we know what's going on?
We
Timing
are
of that?
we're not yet, but soon put that out on the street for a design build.
Okay.
The action that you took last month, this is all coming back to me. The action that you took last month to award a construction management, planning, project management contract to Skanska?
To Skanska, yes.
To Skanska? It was the first step, we were having them help us to develop the design build procurement.
Okay, and
Hopefully in a couple months, you'll see that back here.
well, and this may be a question for further down the road, but I'll ask it now, so feel free to punt it for further down the road. Wasn't there an agreement originally with Duke that they were going to do some work here and then they were going to be the provider of the solar panel going forward?
Of the electric infrastructure, like the undergrounding of the electricity and the charging equipment, they're out there right now, they're out at work, completing that work.
Okay, so that wasn't the solar, that was the electrical infrastructure?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, yeah.
Then,
They did do an assessment
Right.
on the feasibility of solar in our campus. So they've completed that.
okay.
And in fact, the Skanska team is utilizing that assessment that was done to help us put together a solicitation document for solar panels.
Okay, but then the actual solicitation for solar panels is going out to the public as far
Yes.
as taking that the next step?
Correct.
Oh, okay, thank you.
All right,
That's all,
thank
Madam
you.
Chair. Thank you.
Commissioner Cox?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brad, didn't we have some kind of electrical issues here yesterday with,
Oh, yes, we did,
Yeah.
yeah. About, I don't know, 6 o'clock in the morning, a dump truck with its back up in the air was driving, it looked like pretty fast from the video that Al showed me. We had a video of it, and it hit the wire. It hit the electrical wires and the cable internet wires to PSTA, and had also a massive explosion. And the Duke and Spectrum folks were out there all day yesterday. And then unfortunately, our website, well, I learned that a lot of things go down when the internet goes down, including our website for our customers, and then even some of our phone ability goes down. That's why we are doing a new procurement for a new website that will be in the cloud, that it will be off-site, and some other things we're trying to move to be more resilient on that. But it's back up
Yeah,
nicely
thanks,
today.
Thank
Rachel
you.
and I came up with a contingency plan for this morning if it wasn't back up today, of all paper again, paper packets, but we didn't have to do that.
Okay, and I'm gonna go over a few things here. On the, under item 8, in the February PSTA access accountability metrics, and they're all good, Brad. There's a uptick everywhere, in ridership, in on-time performance, complaints way down, percentage of rides booked through the app going up.
Yeah, that's good.
It looks good. I mean, it really, really looks good. And I'm thankful that we're going in that direction too. And also one other thing that you may or may not be aware of, that Transdev is assisting the,
Oh, yeah.
the rugby tournament coming up. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, Wounded Warriors.
The Wounded Warriors.
The Wounded Warriors program, which Commissioner Reed was grateful to her that she helped make the connection to us. They're having a big, huge tournament of rugby up in Wesley Chapel, and there's teams coming from all around the country, and they don't have enough wheelchair accessible vehicles that can take teams of folks, and so Transdev and Wheelchair Transport have stepped up, and they are going to be providing the airport service to from the airport when all the teams come into Tampa International to the hotels.
That's
Yeah, it's
great.
gonna be great.
Yeah, that's on Thursday. They'll be doing that at the beginning of May, and then they're taking them back on Sunday. And they're doing it at no cost either. They're doing it as a donated
No cost to
service.
us. Yes,
Okay.
it's nice.
Yeah.
Thank you, Transdev.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
We met them
We did.
the other week.
We did.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Cox. Next, Vice Chair Saraki.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a comment. This week, I went to the Rays game, and we took the Sunrunner, and I have a suggestion. I don't know if you can help me, Brad. I went to pay for my family with my credit card, and you said the credit card fees are up about 3,000%, which is great. But I was only limited to use that credit card twice.
Then what happened?
It locked. So then I had to get another credit card to pay for the other two people. So I was wondering, is there a way we can maybe fix that so I can pay for everyone all at once? I had to wait, I paid, then I had to wait, then I paid, and then the driver said, oh, it's locked, you can't pay again. So I had to get my American Express card out, and then I paid again. So I just wanted to bring that up. We can fix that, because I want to make sure I pay for everything.
Well, yeah. Well, thank you for giving us additional revenue, then you should have. Right, and it should not do that.
All right, well.
Theoretically, you can tap it 3 times, and then you will hit the $5 max, and that's all you have to do it. You have to,
Okay.
for your whole group.
Oh, okay. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for telling me that. Now I know.
Well, did it actually, the driver told you that?
I just clicked it and then because there was 4 of us, and then I just did it automatically.
Okay, we'll find out.
Okay, well, thank you.
Okay.
I'm all set. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Fig Sanders.
Thank you, Brad. I just want to let you know I just got my email. Yes, I am going with you today. So
Great, great. Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Schulman.
Thank you. Just to follow up on Commissioner Saraki, so I think that highlights also one of the, an area we can improve is on the group passes, right? So, or you can buy a group pass, I think it's $10 for up to 10 people for the day, or 5, I forget how many people it is. But that you have to do through the Flamingo Fairs, and you have to have the group pass, and I know I had difficulty, I still have $10 on credit somewhere in the PSTA system for having done it twice by accident. But it's hard to communicate that when your people are doing contactless with their credit card and the fare capping, because the fare capping is supposed to be for an individual. So technically, each one of those people, if they were paying their individual fares, would have paid $2.25 each. And instead, we collected $5 total. Or, well, you paid another $5 on the other. So, but then when they went back the other way, it would have been capped also then, unless
Sure
you
thing.
use different credit cards again, because it was capped for the day. So, I don't know what the solution is, but,
Well, we, for that exact reason that you're describing, we adjusted the group pass cost to be $5 to be equal to the daily cap. So that you could still use your contactless payment and get the group pass rate.
okay, so the group pass went down to $5
Yeah, it's $5.
for the day?
Yeah,
Okay,
up to 4 people.
okay.
I mean, maybe somehow the Flamingo system knew that you had more than 4 people or something, I don't know.
We did. We had more than 4.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Cox?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brad, yesterday when we lost the power capability, did that also affect the buses tapping, for fares?
No, I don't think that was affected.
Okay.
I heard the phones here. Luckily for our PSA access, the reservation agents are mostly from home. So that wasn't affected. And then, the internet and the website. Yeah.
All right. Looks like there are no other requests. I was wondering if, Brad, you wanted to give everyone just a quick overview of our trip to DC?
Oh,
and
yeah.
The APTA conference?
Yeah. So, thank you. I'm very good. 2 weeks ago, Chair Driscoll and I went to Washington D.C., met with Harry Glenn. It took us to meet with our whole delegation, the 2 senators plus the 2 congressional members from Pinellas County, Representative Luna's office and Congresswoman Castor. And then we also met with a number of, really all of the key Transportation Committee staff, leads for the House Transportation Committee, for the Senate Banking Committee, which oversees public transit in the Senate, staff as well. And the 3 things that we were really touching on for all of those meetings were, one, there's an issue that I gave a presentation to the Legislative Committee about, related to our use of TNCs, which, as you know, we use a lot of Uber and Lyft. I was told by Uber and Lyft we are the #1 customer of Uber and Lyft in the state of Florida. We buy more Uber and Lyft rides than anybody else does. Although I feel like when we're in DC, Harry Glenn maybe comes close because he buys a lot of Ubers for us as we drive around there. There's a lot of confusing language around the federal rules and regulations regarding drug testing our drivers for our public transit service, and we're just very hopeful that that can be clarified. So we were updating not only our congressional members about this issue, which is incredibly successful and positive, as you know, here in Pinellas County. We want to make sure we can continue to provide that in an appropriate way. I can certainly talk to any of you more about the details of it. I'm also working with a whole set of transit agencies around the country that are also sort of following our lead and using TNCs. And we're going to make a proposal to the federal government on how to maybe clarify their language regarding this. So that was one key issue that we talked to them about. And then the other 2 were our congressional, fiscal year 2025 congressional community project ideas. One would be for capital infrastructure for the 34th Street US 19 Express. to not make Sunrunner stations, but to provide real-time information and some enhanced bus stops along that corridor. And then second was this issue with Flamingo that we've talked about, where we would be able to provide a real-time or a mobile way that a customer could register their identification as a senior citizen or as a veteran or as a student or whatever and get the discount. Right now, you have to go to a transit center and show your driver's license to a human, but there are systems out there that are now coming online that you can sort of have that information and verify it on your phone, and then a tourist, say at the beach or something, wouldn't have to go to a transit center to get the discount. They could just qualify the discount right there. And I think a lot of our senior citizens would really like that. So we talked to we got very positive feedback, I think, from both congressional members about those two projects ideas. The way that works is you have to kind of go through an application process with your congressional member. They have to be willing to sponsor it, and they only get a certain number total for their district. And then it goes through the budget process, which Congress, is incredibly delayed. So we probably won't see any money we would get from this for at least a year, a year and a half or so. But it's the way it works. So it was a good visit.
Thank you.
Any questions on that? Any other business for the board? All right, our next meeting will be Friday, April 26th, for the budget workshop at 9 a.m. And then our next board meeting is May 29th at 9 a.m. Seeing that there's no other business, thanks, everyone. This meeting is adjourned.
See you at the workshop.
Man, I just, all that input I had today.
I know, we kept you so busy.
I did all my work for today's meeting before we ever got it.
Yeah.
That's right, you did. You confirmed that the in-person thing is still required. Which is good.
Oh.